1, 2, 3. The light from the flash was blinding. I'd been ordered to remove my glasses for the picture, and I could see nothing for a moment. I hadn't washed my hair in 3 days, and since I was arrested directly from my bed where I'd been sleeping, the mugshot about to be plastered all over the papers and the local news broadcasts was most likely just as horrendous as the crimes that started the whole ordeal. I'm going to uncuff you briefly so that you can remove your jewelry and place it in this bag. Once you do that, you'll head to that holding cell right there, the officer said, pointing. And change out of your clothes. You look to be a large, so here, take these, she said, handing me a polyester jumpsuit. She reached into a nearby bin and pulled out a pair of rubber flip-flops. These are your new shoes. You will wear them at all times, including when you take a shower. Don't lose them. She thrust the shoes into my already full hands and nudged me toward the cell. I tried my best not to think about all of the different feet that had already worn these rubber shoes, but despite my best efforts, I was haunted by the thought of how many different species of bacteria would soon be inhabiting my toes. I jumped when the metal door slammed behind me. The room was dark, and the acidic smell of urine was overwhelming. I held my breath and quickly stripped off my clothes before slipping into the jumpsuit. It felt like I was wearing cardboard. The female deputy had been observing me through the window and opened the door once I was dressed. Put your stuff in here. She held out a brown paper bag, and I stared at my belongings as I dropped them in. My heart sank as she folded up the bag and handed it to another deputy. My clothes were no longer my own. They belonged to the county now. Come on, you got to see the nurse for some blood work and a pregnancy test. For a moment, I secretly prayed I was pregnant. Maybe then they would let me go home. Home. I wasn't even sure where that was anymore. I certainly couldn't go back to where I was living. In fact, by now, my belongings were most likely packed and sitting outside. As I sat down on the cold metal chair across from the nurse, I suddenly realized how shitty I felt, physically. The chair was freezing, yet somehow I was sweating. My bones began aching and my eyes watered uncontrollably. I was sick. Okay, Miss Johnson, I'm going to do a couple of tests, but first I'd like to ask you a series of questions, she said, grabbing a nearby clipboard. Name? Tiffany Johnson. Age? 27. Weight? Like 160, I think. Currently taking any medication? I hesitated. She glanced up at me and repeated the question. Are you currently taking any medication? Yes or no? Yes. What medication? I took a deep breath and began. Dilaudid, roxicodone, Oxycontin, Xanax, Percocet, Loratab, Vicodin, and marijuana? I'm not sure if that last one counts as medication, but okay. And would you describe the crimes you have been charged with as shocking in nature? Yes, I would. She looked up at me over the rim of her glasses as she set her pen down and leaned back in her seat. Okay, I don't usually do this, but you've piqued my interest. Would you mind telling me why you consider your crimes to be shocking in nature? As I proceeded to tell her what happened, I watched her expression morph, from confusion to shock to disgust, then back to confusion as she leaned forward to check something off on her clipboard. Okay, yes, I would say that counts as shocking in nature, definitely, she said, attempting to regain focus. She cleared her throat and nervously glanced up at me as she made some notes. All right, since you're obviously going to be experiencing a severe withdrawal from opiates, we are going to keep you in medical for a few days before bringing you to the general population. There, we will be able to monitor you to make sure you have a safe detox. I am just going to quickly get a few samples from you, and then they will take you down. I watched intently as she prepared her syringe, and my stomach doubled over on itself at the sight. My palms began to perspire, and suddenly I felt as if I might explode. My skin crawled, and my legs were restless. It had only been about 20 hours since I'd last gotten high, and I already felt like shit. This was going to fucking suck. The officer didn't say a word as she led me to my cell. She slid the heavy metal door open and slammed it shut behind me, making me jump 2 feet. I wasn't sure I'd ever get used to that. I turned to ask her when I would be getting my phone call. I'd seen this in movies. But she was gone. I turned back around and took inventory of my tiny room. There was a metal toilet, a metal sink, a roll of toilet paper, and a large plastic tub on the floor. I was assuming I was supposed to put this plastic mat I was holding inside the tub to sleep. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my foot, and I let out a scream that sounded like someone being murdered. It was then that I noticed I wasn't alone. On the floor to my left, there was another tub, and it was occupied. The person was wrapped from head to toe in a wool blanket, completely covered. All I could see was the outline of her body.